All right, everybody. We are live today. I'm excited to be on and, of course, have someone that's super special, Andrea Morton. And she's an incredible life coach. And I think this is going to be a huge value for everybody that's watching, regardless of what stage you're in or where you're at in life with all this crazy COVID stuff going on. I think it's a great opportunity for people just to kind of see maybe where they're at. Maybe they reinvent things, maybe they shift. But I think it's a great opportunity to kind of hear from people who are helping others and helping them kind of get through different stages of life. So, hi, Andrea. How are you?
I'm doing great. Justin, thank you so much for having me.
You bet. Well, more importantly, thanks for coming on. I think it was a lot of fun. And real quick, before we kind of jump into some questions, I think it's important for people to kind of know you and your background, as we were kind of chatting the other day and kind of rolling into this. But, I mean, you went to Stanford?
I did, a long time ago.
So you're a smarty pants, which I mean, that alone in itself is pretty incredible. You're born and raised in San Diego, went to Stanford for obviously your bachelor's, and then you did your teaching credentials at the University of San Diego.
I did.
Which is right here in hometown. So that's pretty awesome. Going through what's the GATE certification?
That's for children with a gifted and talented education program.
Oh, okay.
And so that's to be the kind of teacher that specializes in meeting the needs of exceptional learners.
Wow. So when you did, that was for the high tech high and stuff. Is that how I understand it?
I got that certification before I started working with High Tech High. It was something that was a passion for me because I grew up here in San Diego in the GATE program, and it's a very unique kind of kid and learner, and I wanted to be able to meet their needs.
That's pretty incredible. You took 5 years off raising your kids and doing all of that. And then your kids are what, at 11, 15, and 13 right now? Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, just about. They're all about to have a birthday.
I was about to say, you got one left before they hit the teenage years.
I'm hanging on.
You're almost there. And then, after you went to Spain, so I kind of wanted to talk about that real quick. I mean, you're taking your family from here in San Diego, and you and Hank and everybody running out and going into Barcelona, Spain, which it's hard enough living here in the U.S. and dealing with your life, but then picking up an entire family and moving into a completely unique and different country. What was that like?
It was absolutely incredible, and I would recommend it to anybody listening. If you've ever had a dream of doing something crazy like that with your family, just picking up and doing something brave and amazing and starting brand new, it was the most incredible decision we've probably ever made as parents. It just illuminated the world for our kids, and they don't look at things the same way. And now they speak all these languages. So it was great.
Yeah, I mean, I think about that, and we're so used to it in the United States where English and around the world, it's a primary language, of course. And I've spent time overseas when I went to college, and you try and learn the language, but of course, naturally, in that country, they're trying to learn English. To go and try and speak Spanish, or when I was in Germany, living in Germany for years, trying to speak German and learn it. And you go to the cash register and you try and use your lines, and they're like, "Hey man, what's up, man? Are you from America?" Like, "I'm from Germany, but I'm going to be slang English now." And you're like, "Well, that ended that one." So I don't know if you guys experienced that when you were in Barcelona, but
I did.
Yeah.
I did, but I had a way of trying to just appreciate them for being so kind to try to talk in my language. And then I would respond to them in very bad Spanish and let them know that I was trying to learn, and I would be so grateful if we could talk in Spanish. And they were usually really nice about accommodating that for me. They're really great people. So it was a mix. Then there was one time in Amsterdam when someone said, "Oh, what part of California are you from?" The second I started talking, because they really knew.
Especially if you're from Texas and other places.
Exactly.
That's funny. So before we get started on a couple of questions, what is kind of one or two things people should know about you, right, that they may not know in general if they're just getting to know you now, that I think may resonate with people? We were chatting earlier. I think there's some important things that they should know. Is there anything you'd like to share about that before we jump into a few questions I have?
Yeah, I think there's something that sort of hits me profoundly, which my girlfriends and I talk about all the time when we go for coffee. And just for reference, I'm 44. And so I think that I may have been part of one of the very first generations, maybe the first generation of women that were raised by our mothers to believe that we really could be anything. We really could do anything. We could be a superwoman. So I was little in the 1980s, and you remember the women with their big shoulder pads, and they were going out to work in their business suits. And I was raised to believe that women were truly the equal of men. And I grew up completely believing that a woman could do anything. And I think that's probably what got me to Stanford, was that confidence and that faith. And all the way up until the moment that I became a mother. And, when you become a parent, your values, it's like a personal earthquake, I like to call it, and everything gets kind of mixed up. And all of a sudden I realized painfully that while maybe I could do anything, I couldn't do everything, especially not all at the same time. And that's really where a lot of the impetus for my work as a life coach comes from, was this moment as a mother where I realized that I had to dig deep into my value system and figure out a lifestyle that would actually, benefit my family, and it would be something that would be something that I could really believe in. So my personal values were connected to the actual work I was doing. And so I find that my girlfriends and I talk about this consistently, that we can't necessarily do it all at the same time. And there's these judgment calls you have to make. And it's something that guides me as a coach, because I work with women. I work with a lot of people, but I especially work with women and mothers who have, had to make some difficult decisions. And some of them have actually taken themselves out of the workforce, or they've imagined their careers differently than what they had expected them to be.
Yeah, and that's kind of what leads me into my first question really for you is, when was that kind of shift for you, right? And, talk about kind of that journey for you, going from what you were doing, which was teaching and then raising your kids, and then now, okay, you wanted to get back in it, but you didn't want to necessarily go back to what you were doing in a way, and kind of how that journey happened for you to becoming a life coach today.
I mean, it's been an incredible adventure, but really I would say that when we moved to Spain, I had the opportunity to do a lot of soul searching and imagining of my second act, if you will, of life. As my children are starting to get older. And what happened was that since we were living so far from California, but my husband was still working in both California and abroad, he had to travel very frequently for business. In fact, there was 1 year out of the 3 years we lived there when he was gone for about 6 months of that year. And so I had an awful lot of time on my own with the kids and time to think about, things that were important. And in the evenings, when I was maybe doing laundry or dishes, when the kids were asleep and I was all alone, I would listen to podcasts. And I found this one podcast that I really loved by a woman named Brooke Castillo. And she's just an incredible life coach. And I really liked her because she was funny and she was approachable. And she was the kind of person that I felt like if she knew me in real life, we would be friends. And she was a life coach that was speaking about a lot of topics that were important to me at the time. For example, starting your own business and having the confidence that you could do that, because I had been tossing over my second act of like, I think maybe I might want to try going into business. I've been a teacher for 20 years, absolutely love teaching. It was the most amazing career. I had felt a calling to it for so long, but now that I was entering my 40s, I was feeling the urge to try something new. And so I really loved her podcast, and it all kind of just came from there. After I had spent some time listening to it, as I was beginning to put my business together, I decided to actually take some coaching classes, and I decided to get coached. And I was doing it for me.
The coaches teaching the coaches, which is how it all starts.
Right? It is. And, some of the coaches I've had have been some of the best teachers I've ever had, for certain. And but I was doing all of this without any intention whatsoever of becoming a life coach. That was pretty the furthest thing from my mind. I was thinking about a business that I was hoping to build around gratitude. And so I was, hiring people, and I was learning how to manage people, and I was working on creating plans and learning all kinds of technical speak. And I was getting coached the whole time so that I could really believe in myself and really believe like, yes, I am totally the kind of person who can be a leader. I'm totally the kind of person who can run a company. And so, as I was getting the coaching, I would find myself talking to my girlfriends about it at lunch in Barcelona. And then I would find myself coaching them, like someone would bring another problem to lunch. They'd have like something going on with one of their kids or something with one of their husbands. And I would just feel like, oh, well, these are some things I've learned from my coaching classes. And I would start like, just casually sharing it. Yeah. And a couple of times people said to me, you're really good at this. Have you ever considered doing this professionally? And I think that's really what planted the seed.
And you come from a teaching background. Right. So it's a natural progression But I think it's more about people taking that step and getting over that fear, like you kind of did, where you said, well, okay, should I do it or should I not do it? I want to do it. It's becoming kind of a natural passion for me. And I see that I'm good at it because it's helping people. But sometimes people get to that point and they get stuck.
Yeah.
And they don't just start, right? A lot of people, they want to try and plan and then plan to get ready and plan to start, but then plan to start. And then just start. Like, don't worry necessarily about all, I guess, the B, C, D, D, E, F, G stuff sometimes. I've learned that as well. Sometimes you're at A, you want to go to Z. Sometimes you just have to go and allow the how to show up, right? Yeah. Which is hard. It's hard for some people. So why women? I mean, I know it's not just the people you coach, but it tends to be, there's a reason for it, obviously, but why is that?
Before we get to that one, there's something I want to share that I think could be really, really helpful to people that are listening that has to do with how I made my choice. And that's just a really quick strategy because it made the world a difference for me. So maybe there's someone out there right now listening that this could help also. So Absolutely. When I was choosing my path, I was trying to choose between, I'm trying to build a business, but I'm also really attracted to life coaching and I really love it. And I wasn't sure exactly which one to go forward with because I'd put so much thought and love and time into my business. And so this is the strategy I present to you. And I think that you will love this. It's not mine. I didn't originate, but I love it. I learned it in my coaching classes. And that is, if you have two different options and you're really going back and forth, and you want to go ahead and make like a pros and cons list, what so often happens is that people make a pros and cons list, but they're really looking at their cons. And they're really looking at all of the negative things that could possibly happen. And they're looking at the two con lists and saying, which one is going to be the least bad? And so the strategy that I used, which I'm so grateful for, was to really come from a place of abundance and look at the pros. And so if both of these possible paths could be amazing, which is the one that would most fit the life that I want to lead, which is the one that would really light me up the most if both could be successful. So I really recommend that to anyone that might be listening. It was what made all the difference for me. And I'm so glad I chose the coaching.
Yeah, because you're saying, I mean, when you realized that you could, accomplish what you wanted, but also have the time with your family and your kids. Yeah. That's kind of what led you down that path at the end of the day when you were kind of evaluating it.
Exactly.
And then obviously you're finding yourself teaching more women and it's more of that help side. I thought it was brilliant when you mentioned to me why, because it completely makes sense. So I'd love to hear about that. And I'm sure women will connect with this for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I love everybody, but my heart is really with women and mothers when it comes to coaching because there is such a personal connection. And it's not just from my life, but from all of the many multitudes of women that have been in my life that are so precious and important to me. I think that women do sort of a juggling act, especially a modern woman today, because, we are trying to fill so many roles. We are trying to be the mother and the wife and the daughter and the sister. And I don't know if you've heard of this sandwich generation, but so many of us are in it where we are taking care and raising children at the same time that we are taking care of older parents. And for example, my mom is in her 80s and she's just 5 blocks away from me. And I just stopped by there this morning. And so we are trying to take care of everyone at the same time that we are also trying to build a career, build a future, maybe lose that extra 10 pounds that we haven't been able to get off since we had the baby. We're trying to create that health or, deal with our relationships. There's just a lot of things that women are trying to juggle all of the time. Yeah. And so my heart is really with meeting these women where they are, where sometimes they feel so overwhelmed. And sometimes they feel so alone. And there's a feeling that I can't describe, but I'm sure that you and everyone would relate to, where you can be surrounded by people all day long. You can literally be like running your kids' distance learning at the same time that you're trying to be a full-time employee, at the same time that you're trying to maintain your relationship with your spouse and keep the house clean and do it all. And at that moment, you feel so alone. And it's funny how you can feel that alone. And so my role is to support women that are in that moment where they want things. They want to remember who they are. They want to remember their passions and figure out who they're going to be with the rest of their life. And so it's pretty great. It's a pretty great job.
And so what challenges, if any, have you faced, right? Either before, becoming a life coach or in the process of creating the life coaching business for yourself and moving into helping people, is there anything you've had to overcome and how'd you do it? Kind of like coaching yourself as you're coaching.
Well, and it's funny you should say that because I actually self-coach all the time. And it's one of the most crucial pieces of being a good coach. I have to completely clean my brain out before I get together with a client because in order to be in that space with them, I need to have nothing of me coming into it. And so I actually run coaching models for myself both before and after every coaching call that I do with a client. And I have a lot of different practices around that. But so you were asking me a different question though, and you were asking me, I think, what had been hard or maybe some struggles that I had gone through.
So maybe any challenges that you faced, right, as you've kind of gone through this process for yourself, because you essentially have done what you do coach to do. And so yourself, what challenges have you faced?
I mean, I guess one of the first challenges would be that a lot of times in my life, just like this, I've come up with an idea for something that I feel really strongly about that there may be a lot of people around me think is a little crazy. So for example, when we told everyone we were moving to Spain, there were some people that really literally thought that we were a little crazy. And,
I mean, it's incredible though. Look how it turned out. Yeah.
It's true, but doing something like that, it takes a level of determination and grit and courage that a lot of people talk about moving abroad, but to actually go through the huge amount of work it takes to be able to get the visa, for example, to be able to organize all of the furniture that you're going to move, just all of the little details. It takes a lot of hard work and one foot after the other, one step at a time. And so I would say that with life coaching, it was much the same, that when I first raised the notion of me becoming a life coach, there were people in my life, including people who really love me, family members, that were a little skeptical. They didn't maybe know much about life coaching. Maybe they weren't sure that that was a path that they could see me in. And there was a lot of sort of thought that was directed toward me of like, are you really sure? And what's been so great is that as I continue to walk forward with my path and my career, all of those people, those same people are totally on board now. It's almost like, maybe they helped push so that I could really be sure that my resolve was firm. But now that they see how committed I am and how incredible this career has become and how many people that I'm helping, they all have that faith and confidence too. So that's been really fantastic.
And I don't know if you know who Gary Vaynerchuk is or who Gary V is. Are you familiar with him at all?
I'm not. Tell me about him.
Well, he's not even a motivational speaker guy. He just accidentally fell into it, but he's more of an entrepreneur guy. But anyhow, he always talks about making sure you're not living through the opinions of others, right? Because you'd mentioned that where some people didn't see you in that role, or you didn't know if they saw you in the role, they thought you were a little crazy, etc. And so if you allow those opinions, right, to direct what you do, you're going to live unhappy.
Yeah.
Right. And I think he talks about, the money, this and that, but it's not about necessarily the money. It's about the happiness behind it. It's irrelevant. We all know this, money and happiness and all these other things. So I thought that was really interesting because not living through the opinions of others allowed you to do it without being held up and saying, oh, well, maybe they are right. Maybe I shouldn't do this. Maybe this isn't the right fit for me, et cetera, et cetera. So I'd say that's a good challenge you fought through.
Well, it's definitely one that I think that maybe people listening could relate to because all of us have a chorus around us of different voices, and they really mainly have very good intentions. They love us. They want to protect us. They're coming from a place of fear sometimes. And so that's one of the benefits of having a coach is that you have a voice that is not coming from fear, but really is asking you to look deep within yourself and who you are and what you most want. Because it's not about what your coach thinks or what your coach wants. Coaches don't have an opinion. It's really about them showing you your own brain so you can figure out your next steps and what your heart is telling you, what your gut is telling you, what the learning that you've brought in with your life experience is telling you, and having that confidence to move forward.
That makes sense. I mean, are there any specific questions if someone's out there looking to, hire a coach? Should they be asking certain questions or should they be wondering certain things to make sure they're in alignment with that person? I mean, I think you mentioned you kind of give call it a free consultation, a strategy meeting to make sure it is the right fit.
Yes.
But are there certain questions that someone should be asking or trying to align with that coach?
I think the most important thing when you're sitting down with a new coach I think would be two things. First of all, is the coach listening? Because a really great coach is going to be someone who listens as much or more than they talk. And it's going to be someone who's really paying attention to you. because they're really monitoring what your brain is doing. And it's so interesting and exciting, almost like the two of you are sitting side by side on a couch and you're watching a movie, but instead of the movie, it's your brain. And so you guys are pulling it apart. And so the coach has to be a really attentive listener and someone who is going to be able to ask really the right questions, really deep questions to get you to a new level. Because the reason why a coach can help is that they can see things from an outside perspective that you in your own brain just can't see because it's too close. You're so far in your story that it's impossible to pull back to the outside and see it from more of a macro view. And so that's important. And then other than that, I would just say that with a really good coach, it would be somebody that, like you feel a connection with, that you have a good rapport, that you feel very relaxed and you look forward to coming to the calls, because nobody is going to be vulnerable or allow themselves to be vulnerable unless they feel safe and unless they feel a connection with the person they're talking to.
What I was going to ask you, that was my next lead in, is do you find it a challenge? And I'm sure there's steps that your clients take with you when they become vulnerable, right? Because that's everybody's scariest step, right? They'll kind of slowly open up, give you some tidbits and snippets, right? And then as they kind of see how you react to that, they're like, okay, maybe I can lead in with this. Or there are certain strategies you use to start to dig 3 layers deep on someone because they're hiding stuff from you, right? They got all these stories and things they're telling themselves in their brain. And it's kind of getting those few layers deep to get that to open up and getting them comfortable to do that. Is that an issue that you find?
Well, I have 2 answers to that, but the first one is just that I do find with almost every client and almost every session that when I say in the very beginning, so how's your week been? Usually they answer with, oh, it's been good. And then by the end of the call, they might be in tears talking about something that happened. And it's totally normal. And it happens to all the clients. It's not just one, it's everybody. And so I think that really what that comes down to is a person connecting. And a lot of times we just go through our life and we're not really connecting to ourselves. We're just kind of doing it. We're going through the motions. Yep. We're trying maybe not to look at what's going on inside because maybe it's just too much, especially with COVID and, social distance learning and all the things. We're like,
our brains can be a very scary place.
Yes, for certain. But in terms of a strategy, I use a model that was pioneered by Brooke Castillo, the woman that I mentioned earlier. And it's quite fantastic. And really, it comes down to you start with a person's feeling. And what it says is that you look at what a person is feeling and that their feeling is going to direct whatever actions they take. And their actions are going to create results. And then you have to figure out what they were thinking about whatever's happening in their life before they had that feeling. So just for an example, say you had a client come in and they were feeling angry. And you ask them, so what do you do when you're angry? And they say, well, maybe the situation was their boss asked them to do 3 hours extra worth of work before the end of the day. And they're feeling very angry. And you ask them, well, what did you do when you were angry? And they'll talk you through all of their actions. And what it leads all the way back to, which is very, very important, is what were they thinking before they started feeling angry? And if you can start monitoring your thoughts, it can really unlock your life because we don't always have control over our feelings, but we can choose to change our thoughts. Mm-hmm. And so I work on that a lot with my clients, and it's incredibly effective.
So if I were in a coaching situation with you right now, and if I were a woman, and I was looking to, I've been raising kids and now they're at a certain age, where they're a little older, and I'm getting back into doing something, beyond raising the kids, what advice could you give to someone like me or someone you're coaching who is going through that and trying to figure out, hey, I don't want to go back to what I went to school for. Right. I went to school for X or Y, but I don't like that anymore. I want to do something new. Like, how do you walk somebody through that process if they want to get going again, but just don't want to do what they were doing before, want to do something and kind of be reinvented? So
Well, if you were a woman in my practice, the first thing I would do would be to have you create what I call a value priority list. And so basically, first I would have you brainstorm all of your values, all the things that matter to you in the world, no matter what they are. And I'd have you throw them all out onto the same paper. And it could be crazy, almost like a brainstorming session with a little kid that's writing an essay. And then from there, I would ask you to prioritize all of your values. So maybe you have things on your paper like my kids, my husband, my mother, becoming the president of the company. I don't know, you have like 1,000 different things that are a value, travel, health, all of the things you have. And then I would ask you to rank your values in order of the most important value to the least important value. Because what we end up finding sometimes is that the reason why a woman won't move forward toward a new career is because her top value is taking care of her children. And so every time a new career opportunity comes up for her, she finds a reason to turn it down, or she finds a reason why it's just not going to work out this time. And so it's important before you begin making a plan to figure out where your real values are. And from that point, then we can begin looking at your feelings and finding out, what are the walls that have been holding you back, and see if we can start moving you forward toward your real dreams.
Huh. I feel like I just got coached right there. So some rapid fire. I'm going to do some rapid fire with you, if you don't mind.
All right, no problem.
This should be a little bit of fun. What's your favorite sweet?
My secret, which don't tell anybody, just for you, is white chocolate. I am pretty much a glutton for white chocolate.
Cookies, or like white chocolate, like just in general?
White chocolate, anything.
Okay.
Like a white chocolate bar. My children sometimes come up to my room because they know that there's somewhere some white chocolate.
Hidden. All right, well, that's good to know. Speaking of your kids, you got 3 of them. What are their funny names?
Oh, they're going to kill me for telling you this. They no longer go by these names now that they are big teenagers. But when they were small, we called them Mr. Bug, Mr. Bean, and Miss Bee, because they were all like cute, like a bug, a bean, and a bee.
I call my son Brody Bug. I say, "What's up, Bug?" That's his little name. Those are good ones. And then, we haven't really talked about your husband Hank too much, but I'd like to bring him in here and hopefully not embarrass the heck out of him. But is there any kind of embarrassing story that you can share that wouldn't be too much, but maybe get a chuckle out of everybody?
Well, it certainly makes me chuckle. So when we were living in Spain, as I told you, he used to travel a lot. And one year he'd been gone for a couple of weeks, and he came home to Spain to us. And he had shaved his head. I mean, like completely bald. Like there was not one like tiny little molecule of hair on his head. Did he use
like a pick? Like
with a straight razor.
It was gosh.
Crazy.
He's like straight out of a movie, man.
we were not
What's
expecting
wrong, Hank?
it. Oh, and it wasn't a very good look. It wasn't his best look ever. But we were so shocked. My children went insane. They couldn't stop talking about it for weeks. My middle son in particular was just irate. And so there was a bit of a family campaign for him to grow it back. It was the Grow It Back campaign. But luckily he's a very handsome man, so he always looks good. But yeah, that was pretty crazy.
Well, it looks like the hair grew back, so that's what's important.
For now.
Probably didn't take too long. Now, obviously, we're in the middle of COVID. We're hopefully coming out of it slowly and getting people back to work slow and safe. Anything funny that's happened over the last, say, 60 days, 90 days, while we've kind of been in quasi-lockdown, either at your house or around, that you've kind of seen?
Oh, my goodness. Something kind of amazing that I've seen at my house is that my children have finally learned how to clean a bathroom. And this is not a small thing. Any mother of a teenager can tell you that this is a big deal, because we don't have any help, and I certainly can't do everything. I'm coaching. I have so many clients. I'm busy a lot. And so we're all juggling. And so this was a great time for the kids to step up. And so we've had some sessions of like mom teaching teenagers how to clean bathrooms, and all of us scrubbing toilets together. It's been wonderful. It's been a bonding experience.
That's very important.
But I noticed that the bathroom is getting cleaner and cleaner, because now that the children know that they will be cleaning it, they are being very tidy.
It's amazing what happens when they know mommy and daddy aren't scrubbing the toilets for them anymore, huh?
Exactly.
That's pretty funny. I have your information down here at the bottom. So obviously, if anybody has any questions, or if you want to look Andrea up, obviously she's on Instagram and Facebook. You can go to, so what's that's Think to Thrive Coaching, right?
That's right. ThinkToThriveCoaching.com.
So anybody can look that up. You can Google it. You can go on Facebook, Instagram, Think to Thrive Coaching. Her website's down there with her email address, social security number, credit card number. Just kidding. Everything else is there. We're just finishing up now. Anything you kind of want to leave us with or finish off with? Advice as we kind of keep going through all this wonderful, exciting, unbelievable COVID stuff that nobody, I mean, this is unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually what I was going to speak to was COVID.
Yeah.
I have a ton of clients right now that are experiencing a range of things because of COVID, whether it's anxiety or depression, whether it's just frustration because suddenly they're having to juggle so many roles. But there's a lot going on for all of us. And what I would say is it's really important to work on not suffering twice. And what I mean by that is that when we're worried about something in the future that hasn't happened yet, we're suffering in advance. And it hasn't yet happened and it may never happen. And so what ends up happening, if it does actually happen, is then you've either grieved twice or you've been terrified twice, but you've done it one more time than was necessary. And so what I would advise is really work on that inner feeling of peace and maybe even meditation if possible, but try as much as you can to not suffer in advance, because none of us really ever know what the future holds. In fact, a coach said something to me recently that I thought was amazing and really profound. It's almost like we've all been walking along the edge of a cliff with a blindfold for as long as we've been alive. And what's happened with COVID is that someone has removed the blindfold. And so now we're aware that we're walking along the edge of this cliff, but it's really always been there because really anything could have always happened at any moment, right? You could be in a car crash, anything could happen. So now that you know that there's no blindfold and that something, is out there, really work on not suffering over it twice. If it does happen, you have the strength, you can deal with it. Yeah. And if it doesn't happen, then at least you haven't wasted a lot of your precious time with your family and with your friends suffering. There's no need to suffer two times. So that's what I have for you.
Yeah, totally. And I think everybody, depending on your personality style, I've even had to work on that for myself is not, trying to plan too much into the future or think about things that could possibly happen. Right? We're all guilty of it because it's irrelevant, right? You can't do anything about it. I mean, really, technically, and it may never even happen, like you mentioned. So sometimes you just got to say, you know what, it is what it is. And we're going to go with day by day, be present in the moment and, not look back, not necessarily look too far forward and kind of focus in the moment right now, because that's what we can, be with. So.
Yeah, I agree. And people are stronger than they know. So what I would tell anybody listening is that you're so much stronger than you believe. And when it actually does happen, if it does happen, you will rise to the challenge. So don't suffer in advance because, it just steals away precious time that you could have in this moment.
That is great advice to end with. So we will go ahead and finish there. It's been about 30 minutes. This has been amazing. So, thank you for coming on and being a part of this. And of course, if anybody wants to get in touch with you and looking for that. And then when we end the broadcast, stay on because we'll chat for a couple more minutes and
Perfect.
So don't get off. So
thank you.
Wave bye to everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
We'll talk to you next time.